Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pals Go to the Movies. This is another Throwback Thursday review. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hi, guys.
And today we're going to be reviewing The Big Lebowski. And just fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. Jeff the Dude Lebowski, mistaken for a millionaire of the same name, seeks restitution for his ruined rug and enlists his bowling buddies to help him out. Starting off my review, I'm going to start like always with my pros. I'm going to start off with the cast. We have Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, Steve Buscemi, and Julianne Moore. And then we have in minor roles, Philip Seymour Hoffman, John Turturro, and we have Tara Reid. And we even have Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I mean, this movie has a lot of good names in the casting. I mean, not just because they're anybody and just good names and everything, but these people actually brought really good acting into the movie. The story is a simple story. It's a dude who just wants to bowl and live his life, doesn't want to mess with anybody until some guys come in and pee on his rug. He wants a new rug, or he wants his rug to be clean, or he wants to be compensated for his rug. I mean, come on. And then we go down into a rabbit hole from there. We've all been there, right? I mean, this is a common story. It happens every day here in LA, right? I mean, hey, probably happens 2 times a day to me, right? But hey, we have the Coen brothers who directed and wrote this movie along with Roger Deakins in cinematography. And this is one of their first movies that they actually wrote with the cast members in mind. And what I mean by that is that they wrote Jeff Bridges' character, the dude, in mind for Jeff Bridges. They wrote John Goodman's Watcher character for John. And they wrote Donny's character in mind for Steve Buscemi. When you have the directors writing the characters just for you in mind as an actor, that means that they're doing this because they want you in the movie and they have something because they already have it planned out. They have it already pictured in their mind. So for me, this is a movie that basically they already envisioned it. They already have the cinematographer on board, which is Deakins. This is already basically like rolling, like it's a bowling ball rolling down the lane towards the pins. You know, you can't stop it. It's set in motion. It's a movie. It's not to be taken seriously, right? I mean, just like the character, he's always drinking White Russians throughout the movie. You know, like who does that, right? I mean, it's a good drink. Don't get me wrong, but like, am I going to drink that the whole day and not switch it up? I mean, no, you switch it up. But this is a guy who just goes through life. You know, he's calm, he's peaceful, he doesn't have a care in the world. But when somebody pees on his rug, that's the last straw. He's like, dude, you peed on my rug, right? Like, there's people crashing through his door at all times of the day. He doesn't get pissed, you know? So when things happen, I mean, the only guy in his crew, Watcher, is the guy who goes off and he starts basically seeding the idea that he should start getting mad, you know? So it's like this whole thing is like, hey, he's like, I'm calm. I just need somebody to, you know, pay for my rug. The rug was there and it was a perfect rug and everything. And the other guy, Watcher, he's like, man, you should do something about it. You should do something about it. So it's this whole idea of like peer pressure. And then when things go wrong, they go really wrong. So this movie, I mean, just because when it came out, it did not have a big following, but then it got this cult following after it. A lot of people now quote it, but line by line, there's a famous quote. There's a lot of people who have the favorite characters from the movie, people who can gravitate towards some characters. I mean, overall, it's a fun movie. Don't get me wrong. It's great to just watch. Here's a segue. This movie, after so long, we see the character who plays Jesus in there. There's a movie that just recently came out. It's called Jesus Rolls, and it just came out in 2020. It's been so long that this movie carries so much weight that character's story came out on a movie. These people are keeping it alive, you know, so it's this kind of great momentum of subculture. I mean, it's just amazing that there's so many people who are just fans of this and they just keep going. But moving on to my cons, I mean, the movie is lengthy. Yes, it's really long. It's like almost 2 hours long. It could be shorter. It could be really, really short. There's some scenes that can be cut down, not needed. For example, when the dude, he sleeps with Maud Lebowski, that's a scene that's not needed. You know, that conversation they had can be had in an office. They can have it in a car. They can have it in the limo. They can even have it at a shop drinking a coffee, you know, or over the phone. It's not needed. It could cut down all that scene and everything. There's some things in the movie that doesn't make sense. Why why would they do this? Why would they do that? I mean, this movie, I feel that it's not to be taken seriously. It's just to be goofy, but at the same time, it's just fun. But is there things that don't make sense? Yes. But overall, it is what it is. It's just a funny movie. With that, I'm going to pass it on to my friend Touly, see how he saw the movie and what grade he gave the movie.
So as Sal pointed out, this film does have a cult following, and it does have moments in the film that has influenced the entertainment industry. One of the clearest example of this was in the latest Avengers movie, where Thor represented this Lebowski kind of look. If anything, the film, it has influenced our culture in ways, but to be fair to movies that I have reviewed here on Sal's podcast with him, I will say that this film, in terms of being a throwback, and normally when I review throwback movies with Sal, one thing that I try to keep at the back of my mind as I'm watching the film is, did this film age well? Was the movie as good, or if not better, than if you saw the movie the first time back when it came out? So for me, the movie didn't quite hit that mark, because if I were to treat this film for just being a comedy, then I can compare it to other movies that either age well, or even current comedy movies that were able to do a whole lot better in terms of storytelling, pacing, all that stuff that's outside of the comedy aspect. So if you're going to watch this film based on comedy, then the movie does do that part justice. But in terms of connecting all the other elements that make a movie technically good, then those aspects weren't there. And Sal did say earlier that basically this movie went down a rabbit hole. And to me, that's really a good way to describe it in terms of how I feel about it, because it really didn't lead anywhere. And when it got to what I felt like was the climax or the big reveal, it didn't leave me with like the impact that I don't know if the film wanted me to sort of have at that moment, about how there wasn't any money and that the dude Lebowski was in the end just was being used because he was a nobody, and that if something bad happened to him, it wouldn't even matter. And the fact that he got taken advantage of as well by the daughter, who just wanted a child for herself and not have the dude Lebowski to be involved with raising the kid. I don't know if the movie was trying to be serious at any point, and if it was trying to get me to feel that way, I thought it just fell completely flat. So I would have just liked it if the film do away with any seriousness behind it and focus just what on the film did great. And that was sheer absurdity, over the top comedy, which I feel John Goodman's character was the answer to that, because he kept coming up with these ideas that were really far-fetched. And it was ironic that some of these ideas came to fruition, but really it was those scenes with John Goodman that got me, if anything, riled up, because he seemed to have this polarizing effect on the dude Lebowski's effort. And it made me feel like John Goodman's character was sort of the antagonist in a way as the movie was progressing, because he kept on jeopardizing in a way the dude Lebowski's effort in trying to save this girl from getting quote unquote killed. Again, if they just focused more on that, do with all the serious talk about a person getting killed and the whole misdirection thing, because if they really wanted to go that route, I thought they should have treated it a little more seriously. And they had me for a moment there where I was thinking, okay, there has to be something going on here. And I'm waiting for that reveal. I'm waiting. And when it happened, I just didn't feel anything. And for that, I thought the pacing was horrible too because of that. Because they linger on that for way too long. This film could have been reduced easily to an hour and a half. It felt like watching the dude Lebowski just falling unconscious over and over and having these hilarious visions. Even though that is a gag, I feel like it kind of lost its meaning and impact as the movie went on, because it didn't feel as special each time he fell unconscious. Like, okay, this dude doesn't care about himself. If he didn't want to get hurt, he would try harder not to put himself in these sort of positions. That even comes around to the people he hangs around with, right? Again, I wanted, especially our main character here, to go through some sort of epiphany or some sort of drastic change. You know, seeing a character change in a movie is a good component that would kind of sell me as to whether or not I like the movie. I would appreciate it if he was serious about saving this girl, that maybe he could have gone rogue in a sense that he didn't need to rely on his two buddies. I mean, Donny really didn't do anything. He was just pretty much the end of jokes or being yelled at by Walter. It was really Walter who, again, was sabotaging all these efforts from the dude Lebowski. It's weird that there was a scene where the dude threatened not to be a part of the bowling tournament if his friends weren't going to help him with his problem. And, of course, Walter, being the sort of person that he was, he didn't take too kindly to that, so he and Donny just walked away. And then, a scene or two later, you see Walter and Donny being there for Lebowski again. And I'm thinking to myself, wait, okay, I thought that was the moment where he didn't completely sever their ties of friendship or whatever, but that was the moment where the dude would go on his own and try to figure out what happens and stuff. And to be the sort of character that I expected him to be, because, I mean, let's face it, from the beginning of the movie, they portrayed this guy, this dude, as he calls himself, as someone who doesn't really care about life. He goes through his motions of waking up, going to the bowling alley with his friends, and even that beginning scene with him at the store, drinking out of the milk carton and writing a check for, was it 69 cents or something like that? The movie already set the tone there, the precedent of, okay, the only direction this character can go is up. But did his character really change at the end? Did his actions really influence anything? And for me, the answer is no. That's where I'm coming from, again, when I'm judging a film, where, yes, this component worked for it, the comedy aspect, and if you want to look at it purely for that component, I guess in a way where maybe if you were to judge a horror film and maybe look at it in terms of, did the movie scare you in a way? Was it creepy? That sort of matter? Then, the film, I would say, did what it was supposed to do. But in terms of the art of a film, in terms of, for example, the delivery of a punchline, the pacing, and again, there are movies that we reviewed here on Sal's podcast that have comedy aspects into them, just did a better job at telling the story. Movies like Groundhog's Day, right, with Bill Murray. We even reviewed movies like Caddyshack, which again was a throwback film. Movies like that, I can say it aged well. The movie is still as good today as when I watched it for the first time around when it came out. That's where I'm coming from. So the movie had moments within scenes that worked for itself, for being funny, but for everything to connect together and for me to feel like this movie worked, it didn't hit the mark, because like I said, there have been movies that either we reviewed here on the podcast or just movies that I've seen that we haven't reviewed that I thought just did a better job. So I have to be fair to those movies, because if I give this movie a high score, then for me, I wouldn't feel like I'm being fair to those other movies, because my review of my scores of those movies should have been higher too in that retrospect. So I'm going to give this film a 5.5 out of 10, which is still above average. But given what I've said about it, hopefully how I feel came across. And again, I know people deem this movie as being a cult classic, which it is. I agree with that, but I'm judging it for what I see as well.
I feel that this movie, the story is really lacking. It doesn't go anywhere. It's basically a lackluster, but the comedy is there, the acting is there, especially John Goodman as Walter. I feel that the actual story, if we want to talk about if there is a story, it revolves around the dude, Walter and Donny, especially when Walter's always shutting down Donny, like, shut up, Donny, like, or you don't know anything, Donny. He's always like shutting down Donny down, but when we always see them, they're the trio. They're always mismatched. The dude is, he's always a pacifist. Walter is a right-wing Vietnam vet, supposedly. And Donny is just Donny. He's just there as, I'm just here, hanging out with you guys. And what brings them together, what bonds them together is bowling. And I feel that that's the way they hang out. They don't see each other as they label each other. They just see what brings them together, bowling. I think we can relate to them, or anybody can relate to them as seeing one of these characters in their circle. Among your friends, you can probably say, hey, I know a dude in my group. I know a Walter. I know a Donny. I'm not saying that you see a person like that in your group, but you can say, hey, I know somebody who behaves like them or acts like them, or reminds me of them in a certain way. And I can see that. I see the movie representing that. And at the end, we see that almost when Donny dies, and it brings the group together. And also, as I don't remember where I saw this, either it was an interview or video or read it somewhere, that at the end of the scene where they throw the ashes, when the dude gets mad at Watcher, he tells him, "You were never in Vietnam," or something like that. That was supposed to be one of the lines, but the Coen brothers wrote 2 lines and they recorded both lines, so they went with the "damn it, Watcher," and then he's like, "Dude, let it out," or something, something like that. So there was multiple scripts and there was ad-libbing and stuff like that. So for me, this movie, like Touly says, it could have been shorter. It could have been less lengthy. It could have been simple. It could have been more to the point. It could have basically been more focused. It could have had more concise plots, less holes. Comedy, it was there. I mean, John Goodman brought it. Of course, the dude, he's the dude. And for people who are interested, I'm going to leave a link to the White Russian recipe cocktail video presented by How to Drink. If you are interested in cocktail drinking, that's a good channel to check out. So yeah, for me, this movie was going to receive a high grade, but I think that it lacks the length of the movie. It brought it down. The story, everything brought it down, but the comedy is still there. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for me. With that, I think that wraps it up for the Big Lebowski review. Please join us next time when we're going to review Rope from Hitchcock.
We've killed for the sake of danger and for the sake of killing. We're alive. Truly and wonderfully alive.
Please like, comment, and subscribe, and you can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.